Why do I how do I get these ideas about the external world? Uh, let's keep reading. Frequently I notice them even when I do not want to. Now, for example, I feel the heat whether I want to or not. And this is why I think that this sensation or idea of heat comes to me from something other than myself. And the most obvious judgment for me to make is that the thing in question transmits to me its own likeness rather than something else. Now, this is a very interesting idea. We saw this a little bit with Plotinus, that the thing itself transmits to me its own likeness rather than something else. So, how do I have an idea about external things? Those things transmit information to me. And what do they transmit? They transmit their likeness, an image of themselves, a representation of themselves. The other really important thing about Descartes that's happening right now in this section is the idea that our ideas about the external world, even our sensory perception of them, are representations of the actual things of the world. They are likenesses, images. Something a little bit Platonic about this, but it's different. He's saying that we represent the external world to ourselves in our minds. They transmit an image, a representation of themselves, and that's what a thought is. An idea is a representation of a thing. So we can go back to the wax and think about that. Solid, cool wax is one representation of wax. Hot liquid wax is another representation, but the wax itself is something else. Now, why do I believe that my idea of a thing is a likeness of the thing itself? Now we'll see if these arguments are strong enough. When I say, nature taught me to think this, all I mean is that a spontaneous impulse leads me to believe it, not that its truth has been revealed to me by some natural light. This is a very important distinction. Nature, by some spontaneous impulse, leads me to believe that my ideas of things represent the things themselves. I have in my experience of this pen a representation of it. I represent it to myself. I give it, or I recognize certain attributes. I can't change those attributes. What the pen is transmitted to me by the thing itself. But in my idea of it, how I represent it to myself as hard, cylindrical tool, that comes to me not with the same kind of certainty that I have about a mathematical idea, mathematical equation, or even something purely logical, like my own existence, that in thinking I can't also not be thinking. So a spontaneous impulse is what we might call common sense, right? I have a common sense idea of what these things are. Nature leads me to have this common sense idea. But that truth is not revealed by a natural light. What nature leads me to believe by spontaneous impulse is not known by natural light. Natural light is what gives me certainty and clarity and distinctness. Right? I know by the natural light that I exist. It is impossible that I could be thinking and not thinking. I can't imagine that, right? It's inconceivable. I can't represent it to myself. And so that has a certainty. It is known by the natural light. And again, I think we could think again about Plotinus's image of what is ultimately Plato's image of truth being like the light that illuminates the world. And Descartes is using this same language, right? The natural light is that which illuminates indubitable, clear and distinct truths. And that's all we're interested in. The things that nature leads me to believe, that I believe out of habit, I don't have the same confidence in. Again, a kind of skepticism about the external world and a little bit more about what true knowledge of the external world means and looks like. So let's get to the meat of things here then. The most important section is at the bottom of page 90 going into 91. But it now occurs to me that there is another way of investigating whether some of the things of which I possess ideas exist outside me. Insofar as the ideas are considered simply as modes of thought, there is no recognizable inequality among them, but they all appear to come from within me in the same fashion. But insofar as different ideas are considered as images which represent different things, ideas are considered as images which represent different things, it is clear that they differ widely. Undoubtedly, the ideas which represent substances to me amount to something more, and, so to speak, contain within themselves more objective reality than the ideas which merely represent modes or accidents. My idea of the pencil as a substance has more objective reality, meaning I can represent it more fully than the idea of one of its attributes or qualities. I can't represent hardness in an idea in the same way that I can represent the pencil with an idea. So this introduces the idea of substance, of reality, and of objectivity. And so let me say just quickly what objectivity means here. That objectivity is the extent to which the representation in your mind of the external world contains reality. So objectivity is about our ability to get our idea of a thing to accurately represent something in the external world, to get our representative idea to correspond with the external world. So objectivity is of the mind, but it is objective to the extent that it accurately represents the external world. That's Descartes' definition of objectivity. And objectivity, obviously, is an idea that we still very much live with today. I know that we're running out of time, but let's go on just a bit. Again, the idea that gives me my understanding of a supreme God, eternal, infinite, immutable, omniscient, omnipotent, and the creator of all things that exist apart from him, certainly has in it more objective reality than the ideas that represent finite substances. So, this is an interesting and perhaps questionable claim. Just as I have a more objective idea of the pencil than I do of the quality of hardness, so do I also, Descartes thinks, have a more objective idea of God than I do of the pencil. That, in fact, God is one of the ideas that has the most objectivity. What he means by this is that I have a very full concept of God. I conceive of God in sort of robust terms: eternal, infinite, immutable, omniscient, omnipotent, the creator of all things, all these attributes, this concept. Right? So again, sort of like with the ontological argument, Thomas of Anselm's ontological argument, Descartes begins with the concept of God. We have this very full objective concept of God. What he does with this is very different. He says, now it is manifest by the natural light, that which gives us certainty, that there must be at least as much reality in the efficient and total cause as in the effect of that cause. There must be as much reality in the efficient and total cause as in the effect of that cause. So, there must be as much reality in the cause as in the effect. Right? He goes on to explain this. For where, I ask, could the effect get its reality from, if not from the cause? If something is caused to be hot, it can only be caused to be hot by something hot. And things don't become spontaneously hot. They are caused to be hot by something hot. And what is caused to be hot can only be as hot as the thing that causes that heat. It can't get any hotter than the thing that's causing it. So, right, analogously, something that is caused to be real can only be given that reality by something that has as much or more reality than it. The cause must be at least as real as that which it affects. How could the cause give it to the effect unless it possessed it? It follows from this both that something cannot arise from nothing. I've heard that before many times, right? This is again a extension of that ultimately Parmenidean idea, right? That nothing comes from nothing. Right? Remember that from Parmenides. And also that what is more perfect, that is, contains in itself more reality, cannot arise from what is less perfect. What is imperfect cannot give rise to what is perfect. Right? Because that would be like something creating more heat than is in it to begin with. And this is transparently true not only in the case of effects which possess what philosophers call actual or formal reality, but also in the case of ideas, where one is considering only what they call objective reality. So, this is true not just of formal reality, actual reality, physical things, things that exist in the real world that have physical bodies, but also of ideas, of objective reality. Now, therefore, if we have an idea of God that has objective reality, that has all of these attributes, that is coherent and seems to be consistent and make sense, whatever causes that objective idea must have as much or more reality as the idea itself. Descartes has already said the idea of God has a great amount of objective reality. Now, if the idea of something eternal, infinite, immutable and omniscient, has objective reality, then whatever caused it must also have an equal or greater amount of those attributes. Whatever caused it must also be eternal, infinite, immutable, omniscient, and omnipotent. So, to some extent, Descartes is saying, I have an idea of God that is an idea of a perfect thing. And that idea could only be caused by something perfect. Where could the idea of perfection come from, if not from some perfect thing? It couldn't have come from something imperfect, because something imperfect can't be the cause of something perfect. So, in order for there to be an idea of God, there must be an actual perfect being that gives rise to this idea. Now, you might say, right, well, in fact, there is no idea of the perfect, the eternal, the immutable. There is no idea of God. The idea of God is invented, right? Remember, we have these three kinds of ideas: innate, adventitious, and invented. So, okay, we've got this objective idea of God that is perfect and eternal, and all those attributes. But maybe that's just an invented idea. Why do we say there's any objective reality to it at all? There's no proof of God in this. And so far, it sounds like Descartes is saying, I have a perfect idea of God. That idea can only be caused by a perfect being. Therefore, there must be a God. If we say there is no perfect idea, that idea is invented, then that argument goes out the window. But the problem is that Descartes has already had an experience of perfection, which is the experience of a perfect truth, a truth that is immutable, eternal, and unchanging. That is the truth of the cogito. The cogito is a perfect truth. Something, therefore, must be the cause of perfection. There must be some perfect being which has caused this perfection, which is evident in the cogito, in the truth. So, right, we might then, again, as Descartes goes on to say, ask, well, maybe we are this perfect being. And Descartes will say, well, that's impossible, because this whole philosophical journey begins with the fact that I'm wrong so often, that I'm deluded, right? That I am deceived, that there are many illusions that draw me in. It all begins with the fact that I'm imperfect. Why would any perfect being ever have to doubt anything? Why would a perfect being ever be deceived? How could a perfect being ever be incomplete in the way that Descartes obviously is? So Descartes is saying, I have this perfect idea. That perfect idea can only be caused by a perfect being. And I am obviously not that perfect being. So there must be some perfect being outside of myself. And that perfect being can only be God. All right, we've gone over a little bit here, so we'll wrap it up there. For discussion on, or the lecture on Thursday, we're going to finish up. I'm going to come back. We'll begin going over objective reality, formal reality, and this idea that there has to be as much formal reality in the cause as there is in the objective reality of an effect. Essentially, what Descartes has said, if we put it simply, is there is truth. I am not the author of truth, and therefore there must be something external to me, which is the author of truth. All right, we'll pick it up there on Thursday.